So a financial market is a market in which people trade financial securities and derivatives at low transaction cost. Some of the securities include stocks and bonds and precious metals. The term market is used for exchange and i.e. organization that facilitate the trade in financial securities such as stock exchange or a commodity exchange like the real life physical New York Stock Exchange or the electronic NASDAQ. So financial market, it's, financial securities, derivatives, a bunch of credit default swaps, whatever bullshit term they want to throw at you to get you to buy this. They're bullshit financial tools. We got a whole host of financial tools here. We got commercial paper. So money actually has several functions. Specifically, 3 functions is what you're taught in macroeconomics. But then there's money's a matter of functions for, a medium, a measure, a standard, a store. It rhymes. How can you not, how you gonna throw that away? It rhymes. Money's a matter of functions for, a medium, a measure, a standard, a store. So it's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, and it's a store of value. So the dollar bill, the American greenback, the Federal Reserve note. So this Federal Reserve note right here has a store of value because you could give somebody $1 for right now, and then 1 week later, 1 year later, you could spend that dollar, or they could spend that dollar. So the store of value says that it has purchasing power. A store of value is anything that retains purchasing power into the future. An individual's wealth is a total of all the stores of value of both monetary and non-monetary assets. Other examples of stores of value. Food and water has stores of value. They still have a value there, several weeks later. Now maybe if you're not hungry or thirsty, maybe it doesn't have value at that time to you. But gemstones, shelter, labor notes, collectibles, bonds, fine wine, precious metals, real estate, PlayStation, stored value cards. Stored value cards, these are your gift cards. You buy a $50 gift card, that retains its store of value until you spend it. Livestock, a cow is intrinsically has value, right? A cow has value. Gold, silver, platinum, palladium. So, medium of exchange, unit of account. A unit of account means that it's a common measure of value. It's a unit of account. It's $1. Medium of exchange is like wampum. You have these seashells which you can exchange with. You have, okay, I give you 5 seashells. So it's a medium of exchange. Instead of taking 5 cows over to your neighbor's house in order to pay him for 20 hours of labor, instead you just use cash. It's a medium of exchange. Instead of carrying all that cash, you just give people money. And so it's much easier than bartering. Store of value, unit of account, medium of exchange are the 3 fundamentals we're taught in macroeconomics. And that's why money is a matter of functions for, a medium, a measure, a standard, a store. A medium of exchange, a measure, and a standard. It's kind of the same thing, right? Unit of account, common measure of value. It's a standard, and it's a measure. Okay, kind of the same thing, isn't it? So, okay, those are the 3 functions of money. And, that's important to know. That's important to know because when people say, what is Bitcoin? I think all you got to do is define what Bitcoin is. And defining Bitcoin is what's going to put a lot of the people who have cryptocurrency out. You got to define what cryptocurrency is. What's a digital currency? Well, you got to have at least those 3 things, right? You got to have a store of value. You got to have a unit of exchange. And then it has to be a medium of exchange. There's also other things, such as it being fungible and some other shit. Anyways, it also has to be backed by gold. It used to be backed. Anyways, okay, so the Federal Reserve note, in overview. I'm going to do this one again, only a little bit better. So, Federal Reserve note. This is part, when it comes to financial transactions, this is king. This is a dollar bill. The almighty dollar ain't what it used to be. Homeless people used to ask you for one, now the motherfuckers ask you for three. The almighty dollar. So, just real quick, okay, so this is the United States of America Federal Reserve Note. That's important, okay? That's vital. This says Federal Reserve Note at the very top. So what the hell does that mean? Federal Reserve Note is it's not national currency. It says $1 right here, but it doesn't say U.S. money. This doesn't say cash money. This doesn't say national currency. Nowhere does it say cash money. Nowhere does it say, national currency. It does say that it's legal tender. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So the legal tender, it's printed right on the dollar itself. So this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Federal Reserve notes replaced U.S. notes. There used to be U.S. notes that was issued by the Treasury Department, but now we have Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve notes are backed by the assets of the Federal Reserve banks, which serve as collateral under some section of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. So the assets of the Federal Reserve Bank, like the 10% of all the banks and whatever, securities they buy, the assets of the Federal Reserve banks are generally Treasury securities, which have been purchased by the Fed, by the Federal Reserve through its Federal Open Market Committee. Its Federal Open Market Committee in a process called debt monetizing. So Federal Open Market Committee, they decide with the, monetary rates. They decide, are we going to buy Treasury securities? We're going to buy student debt. We're going to buy the debt from the banks. We're going to buy these toxic assets, these toxic mortgages. So Treasury securities are bought by the Federal Reserve through its Federal Open Market Committee in a process called debt monetizing. You got to monetize that debt. I think when it comes to the Federal Reserve, it's safe to say that the Federal Reserve is a monopoly on debt. They're a monopoly on debt. So this monetized debt, that's a specific thing, it increases the money supply. So they monetize debt by increasing the money supply either with the issuance of new Federal Reserve notes or with the creation of debt money, such as deposits, right? You think that money that you put in the bank is yours? That money ain't yours. You gave it to the bank, and now it's a liability for the bank because they owe you some money. But as soon as you give your money to the bank, that's not your money. That's not your money no more. The bank owes you a liability because they're going to take your money and then lend it out to a bunch of other people. Thank you for your $100. Now we're going to create a bunch of debt. 90% of your $100, $90 is going to be debt. We'll save $10 for you. So you go back and say, where's my $100? Well, we just got 10 left. Well, shit. Well, can I have my $10? Well, you can only use $1 of it. Okay, well, can I have my $1? Sure. You got to sign this first, though. God damn. And here's a check. Where am I going to cash it? I don't know. What kind of fucking bank is this? So this increase in the monetary base leads to a larger increase in the money supply through fractional reserve banking. Okay, so that was, some fun. That was a lot of fun, right? Learning about the Federal Reserve and everything that we're all about. Now, you don't want inflation. Inflation is just a general increase in prices and the fall in the purchasing power of money. You want money to stay strong. So inflation results when the economic system is not fair. So you don't want inflation, a general increase in prices, a fall in the purchasing power of money. Now, recently, the U.S. government has authorized the Federal Reserve to take $500 billion for themselves. We went in and passed a $2.2 trillion spending bill, we being the U.S. government, the Congress. Republicans and Democrats, and Donald signs off on it. Somehow $500 billion of that $2.2 trillion, creative accounting, some sort of, creative accounting, is going to balloon that $500 billion to $4.5 trillion somehow. So that decreases the purchasing power of the dollar. So $2.2 trillion, the $1,200 checks, I think it's good, $1,200 checks for the people, the unemployment, that's good. But 75% of this biggest spending bill in the history of mankind, they're printing up more dollars. And by printing up more dollars, that increases the money supply, but it makes each one of these dollars less valuable. So that $2.2 trillion that they just spent devalues the dollar. Endless quantitative easing is not the solution. You can't just keep on counterfeit printing money up whenever the fuck you feel like it. Quantitative easing actually should never have happened in the first place, especially for political purposes, but it already has. You know, they had 3 rounds of quantitative easing in 2008, and now we got $2 to $6 trillion. 2.2 trillion is what they're telling us, but 6 trillion is how much wealth is being created. So creative accounting, man, we gotta learn this creative accounting technique. Somehow the Fed could turn 500 billion to 4.5 trillion. Well, shit, they should just do that about 4 or 5 times over. I mean, they automatically, oh, you have 500 billion, bam, now it's 9 times higher. Regardless, it devalues the dollar. There's more dollars out there, so they're expanding the money, the total money supply, not contracting it, expanding it. More dollars are going to be printed, more dollars are going to be put out there. They want to get liquidity for the banks. Who cares if the American people have any kind of liquidity? But quantitative easing shouldn't happen for political purposes ever. The whole point of the Federal Reserve being independent is that it won't be influenced by politics. So the only 2 reasons, anytime America should print up some more money, there's only 2 reasons to print up more money. Number 1 is to replace old damaged money or money lost. So you have $1 million bills, you need to keep it about $1 million, right? So over time, $1 million bills are going to dwindle. So you got to keep up and make sure there's a, constant money supply. And number 2, to keep up with the population growth, to keep up with the economic and the society growth. So like Milton Friedman says, what we need is a slow, steady printing of national free-floating fiat currency. Milton Friedman did not like the Federal Reserve, but if we're going to have the Federal Reserve, then the way that we influence monetary policy is we replace the money, keep, whatever, $1 million bills out there, and as the population and the economy grows, you're going to need more dollar bills. So to keep up with the population growth is a reason to print up more money. So, that's not the reason they printed up $2 trillion fucking dollars. We got $23 trillion in debt. 2 reasons is to replace old damaged money or money lost, or to keep up the population growth as a national monetary policy. As a national monetary policy. So if you're just printing fucking money up for any other reason besides keeping a nice, slow, steady printing of national free-floating fiat currency, or to replace money, then you done fucked up. You're just printing money, you're a counterfeiter. You're printing up monopoly money. And who does that benefit? Who benefits from the devaluing of the American dollar? I mean, who pays for that? The American people pay for that. So the dollar is still strong, but they have substantially weakened the dollar with this quantitative easing that they just did with the $2 trillion, $6 trillion spending package for the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and they're talking about doing another one, a Coronavirus 4 package. So we're going to spend $60 trillion this time? So, let's go back to the beginning. So this is an American dollar right here. It says the Federal Reserve Note. The Federal Reserve Note. This is 2013 bill. This is a 2013 bill. Now you have all this weird, fucking pyramid in the eye and all this Latin and shit. I thought Latin is dead. Why are we still... God's dead too. God's dead. Latin's dead. Well, what is this? Even though they've changed the $100 bill, the $5 bill, the $20 bill, where's Harriet Tubman? I thought we were supposed to get some Harriet Tubmans. That'd be fucking badass. Do they not want to put her picture on our money? I mean, shit. she would have dressed better if, she didn't have to deal with the white supremacist, racist dictatorship that was half this country's history. So, Federal Reserve note. This is a Federal Reserve note because it's a note that's printed by the Federal Reserve. And it's a Federal Reserve note. What the fuck's that mean? A note? I mean, that doesn't sound good right there. Federal Reserve note? I want something that says American money. I want something that says national currency. So this isn't a demand note. It's also not a U.S. note. There was U.S. notes that were printed out. Now, they call this a greenback jack. It's $1. It's the only thing that's being printed up as $1. And so this stands for an American dollar. But why does it say Federal Reserve note at the top? Let's just stick with that. Federal Reserve note. What are we talking about when we say a Federal Reserve note? I mean, doesn't that sound suspicious? Hey, you got $1, now I got a Federal Reserve note. What the fuck is the matter with you? I don't want no Federal Reserve note. I wanted some fucking money. You owe me money. Give me my money. All I got is Federal Reserve notes. If that's not good enough for you, I got some silver certificates. Is that all you want, some silver certificates? I got some JFK half silver dollars. So this says two things. The Bank of Chicago, G, and this is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So New York printed this dollar bill up, Chicago printed this dollar bill up, and they were both printed up in 2013. But the American dollar, the $1 bill, has not changed. The $1 bill is still the same that it was 100 years ago. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, the history of the Federal Reserve note. The Federal Reserve note is just as old as the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve began in 1913. 1913 is when the income tax, the 16th Amendment, was passed, and then the Federal Reserve is going to get passed, and then Federal Reserve notes are going to be issued the year after in 1914. And Americans have been using Federal Reserve notes ever since. For 106 years now, the almighty dollar is a Federal Reserve note. We've been using Federal Reserve notes printed up by the Federal Reserve. So Americans, we've been trading, with Federal Reserve notes for 106 years. Now, when I think note, Federal Reserve note, is it like a note you pass to a friend in school? Oh, this is a note. Well, here's a note for you from the Federal Reserve. I owe you $1. I owe you $1 worth of debt. So I don't like that. Automatically, it's suspicious. It's not saying national currency. It's a Federal Reserve note. It's a central bank. So typically speaking, the rest of the world will recognize this as $1, but it seems like there's some weird chicanery. There's some weird shenanigans that's going on. There's a reason why it's a Federal Reserve note. So, yeah. Hey, excuse me. Will you, go out with me, circle yes or no? And this piece of paper is worth $1 worth of goods for you to redeem whenever you feel like it. This note represents $1 worth of goods. You're welcome. Now, will you date me? Will you date me now? I gave you $1. Shit. So the Federal Reserve note makes it sound like that it's not actually money. It's not, it's like commercial paper. It's just fucking Federal Reserve note. It's not backed by gold. It's, free floating fiat currency. So Federal Reserve note, that, just sounds like something else is going on here. Now, the first national currency America had tried was the Continental. The Continental failed abysmally and appallingly. But it wasn't the Continental's fault. It wasn't the Americans' fault. It's going to be worthless pieces of paper by 1790. The Continental was the American dollar that was used to raise money for the Revolutionary War. But the Continental is going to go down. 1790, that's when George Washington began, governing his presidency. It's when the Constitution was written. But the reason why, a major reason the Continental went down was because of the British counterfeiting efforts to the war effort. So that's why when it comes to the American dollar, we don't have, there's no watermark, right? You put it up into the sky, there's no watermark. Usually there's like a little line, a picture, a holographic image. some kind of fancy ink, polymer, plastic. I don't know. So, currency, money. What are we talking about here? Money. So this is the Continental. This is our current Continental. But there's a saying back then that, oh, that shit ain't worth a Continental. So we had American dollar. We tried printing up money before 1914, but it failed. And a lot of, I think Ben Franklin, I think he says that one of the major reasons was just to get away from the moneyed interest of the Bank of England for the Revolution. We just need to, be able to at least print our own money or get away from all this paper money. That's why in the Constitution, the only way states can pay their debts is with silver or gold. Specifically, they cannot use debits, credits, bills of credit. This is what they used to call money before. This is a bill of credit. I'll give you this dollar, and maybe somebody else in the future might think it's valuable, okay? So here's a bill of credit. So the Constitution says no paper money, no bills of credit. The way you're going to pay your bills, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, the way you're going to pay your bills is with silver and with gold. That's sound money. Silver and gold. Gold's sound money, right? Anything, gold is just very durable. Very, very durable. Okay. So, Federal Reserve note. What are we talking about here? How much more time can... 8 more minutes. Okay, so a note. A bank note is also a note, right? It's a bill. So there's two kinds of notes. We could talk about a currency note, which is what we want. Is this a currency note, or is this a bank note? A bank note is a note, and it's also a bill. So $10 bills, $1 bills, $100,000 bills. That's a bank note. So bills, notes, bank notes. A bank note is a promissory note issued by a bank to the bearer and is a negotiable instrument, meaning it can be transferred. Now, commercial bank notes have been replaced by national bank notes issued by the central bank. A currency note is a negotiable instrument issued by the monetary authority of the country. So, in legal tender is a form of money that the courts of law are required to recognize as satisfactory payment for any monetary debt. So the American dollar, this is definitely legal tender. This will hold up in a court of law. I paid them, U.S. dollars. Now, is this a currency note or a bank note? I don't think it's crystal clear. It sounds like it's a currency note. It also sounds like it could be a bank note, too. So, to me, it kind of looks like a Federal Reserve note is a bank note that is masquerading around as a currency note. A bank note who pretends to be a currency. So, a Federal Reserve note, at the very least, is recognized legal tender. So, it serves the same purpose that national U.S. currency, cash money, a U.S. note like a currency note would be, even though it's not money because it's technically a bank note. It's issued by the central bank, the Federal Reserve. So it's a Federal Reserve, a.k.a. U.S. Central Bank note. So Federal Reserve note, bank note. So $500 billion, we're going to go ahead and just print up all these Federal Reserve notes up. $500 billion, $4.5 trillion somehow. We didn't get rid of student debt. Remember Jill Stein, 1.3 trillion is what Jill Stein said. 1.3 trillion to get rid of student debt. Is she crazy? Is she fucking nuts? 1.3 trillion, but no, the so-called educated classes, they're still on the hook for $1.3 trillion. I mean, the $6 trillion spending bill, but we can't use 1.3 trillion of it and just delete it. It's just a, it's a ledger. It's an account. It's a name on an account. So if we would have saved ourselves, we would have saved ourselves a shit ton of money instead of giving $6 trillion to Wall Street, and maybe, we got $1 trillion, maybe we got $0.5 trillion. But if we would have done Jill Stein's program of just $1.3 trillion, we would have saved $2.3 trillion. and we would have got our student loans paid for. But the educated classes, we didn't get any money. Wall Street got their money. They used it for themselves. They got our money. That's Wall Street took our money with the loans, and then they took our wealth, and then now they're on, so Thomas Edison, he's credited with saying this, but just pay attention. If our nation can issue a dollar bond, which is interest-bearing, it can also issue a dollar bill, which is interest-free. The element that makes the bond good makes the bill good also. The difference between the bond and the bill is that the bond lets money brokers collect twice the amount of the bond, an additional 20%, whereas currency pays nobody but those who contribute directly in some useful way. It is absurd to say that our country can issue $30 million in bonds, but not $30 million in currency. Both are promises to pay, but one promise fattens the usurers, the interest collectors, the blood-sucking predator vultures, and the other helps the people. So, whether Thomas Edison, who's kind of a piece of crap, didn't really treat Tesla very good, now did he? But apparently invented the light bulb, or who gives a shit? Thomas Edison, it doesn't matter. The idea is what matters. So if Thomas Edison was talking about this, he's saying that we can issue an American dollar, we can issue a U.S. currency note, or we can issue a bank note. And so we can do one without interest, right? Dead and interest-free. Here's the money, it's just as good as it is. Or we could play all these financial shenanigans, all these creative accounting, fucking bullshit magic tricks, right? We could just say, hey, here's the Federal Reserve bond, and we get the Fed to pass it, and then the Treasury prints it, the Mint prints the coins, the Treasury prints the dollars, and then the Federal Reserve buys the dollars for about a nickel, right? Federal Reserve buys all this cheap-ass money from the American government, and then they give it out to the, the regional Federal Reserve banks, and that's the moment. That's the point right there. Not when the dollar is created, but when it gets into the Federal Reserve, the regional Federal Reserve banks, and then they put it into circulation. Once they put it into circulation, then the United States is on the hook, and they have to back that money no matter what. They are obligated for that money as soon as the regional Federal Reserve banks distribute it. What the fuck am I talking? I mean, this is our system. This is what our system is. So we have a very complicated sort of Byzantine kind of system. The Federal Reserve notes are the only type of U.S. bank notes currently produced. So it's definitely a bank note. The question is a Federal Reserve note a currency note? It's definitely a bank note, right? They print this stuff up. They pay, 4 cents per dollar, and then they have, they made 95 cents, and then they give the money to the Federal Reserve, and then the money supply is expanded, and therefore the value of the dollar goes down. But they benefit. We don't benefit from, they made, 95 cents to the dollar because they printed up all that money and then just printed, just paid for the cost of the paper and the ink and the linen fibers and the cotton. Because an American dollar bill is 75% cotton and 25% linen fibers. Okay? So, shit. I mean, that's a mouthful, is it not? Federal Reserve notes are authorized by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. They're issued to the Federal Reserve branch banks at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve notes are then put into circulation by the Federal Reserve branch banks, at which they become liabilities of the Federal Reserve banks and obligations of the United States government. That's when it becomes money. It becomes money only when the Federal Reserve has it, and then dupes some poor-ass people and gives them this brand new money that they printed up, therefore devaluing the dollar, making the dollar, worth less for everybody. And it's all to the benefit of Wall Street. 75% to 90% of this bill goes to Wall Street. $500 billion at least, and then, Boeing gets $17 billion, and who knows what other banks and corporations are going to come into the foray. Anyways, so Thomas Edison, that was quite a mouthful, if you said that. Because the way Thomas Edison put it was, you can make currency notes straight up